In the offseason, the Seattle Mariners acquired Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker from the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for some prospects. This was coordinated by their general manager, Jerry Dipoto, who really likes trading. Like, he really likes trading. This former Rockies bullpen legend has been general manager of the M's for nearly 7 years now, and has completed nearly 130 trades to this point, by far the most of any club in this window. Even during the 2 months of the 2022 regular season, Dipoto has already completed 7 more trades. The Mariners aren't playing winning baseball yet this season, but through Dipoto's wild amount of transactions, they've been able to construct an impressive roster. So let's dive through that history in its entirety, because the Dipoto trade tree has roots in essentially every MLB franchise, and has likely heavily altered the course of recent baseball history. Dipoto first came into his role in late September of 2015, with the club wrapping up a disappointing 76-win season, resulting in the firing of Lloyd McClendon as their manager, turning the reins over to Scott Servais, who has remained with the club since. Dipoto got busy quickly less than 2 months into his time with the club, conducting 7 different trades in the 2015 offseason. In the short term, Dipoto's trades were short-sighted to say the least. He let go of Mark Trumbo, who went on to hit an MLB-leading 47 home runs for the Orioles in 2016, leading them to the playoffs. Brad Miller also departed and had a career season with the Tampa Bay Rays, clubbing 30 home runs of his own. Had Seattle kept Trumbo and Miller, that would have given them a solid 300 home runs as a team, which would have been the most of any team in MLB by a country mile. Obviously the math isn't exact there, but you get the point. Dipoto's acquisitions did not end up justifying the means of these trades. Joaquin Benoit came in and pitched to an ERA above 5 before getting shipped off to Toronto by mid-season. Wade Miley started 19 games to the tune of an ERA near 5 before he joined Trumbo on the Orioles via trade. After 3 seasons with an OPS plus over 120, Adam Lind regressed considerably with Seattle. Here are the war exchanges of Dipoto's trades with Tampa Bay. The 2016 Mariners were a 10-win improvement on the year prior, actually, finishing 86 and 76 and second in the AL West, but they fell 3 games short of a wildcard spot and likely would have benefited from the pieces shipped off by Dipoto, including Danny Farquhar, the aforementioned Brad Miller, and Logan Morrison, who added up to over 5 wins per Baseball Reference. The Dipoto GM tenure was off to a rocky start for sure, despite the club turning in their best division finish in nearly 10 years. The worst part of his early moves was easily included in the aforementioned Adam Lind trade with Milwaukee, where the Brewers received 3 prospects. 2 would never make the show, but the last one would blossom into a frontline starter for the Brew Crew by the name of Freddie Peralta. Peralta has a 3.93 ERA in his career over 375 innings and has made an all-star team before. And he's not the only starting pitcher that has blossomed away from Seattle after a trade, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Dipoto continued his crazy turnover rate with 9 trades during the 2016 regular season as well, most of them bearing little long-term significance and more standing as damage control for poor moves made in the offseason prior. Keyword there was most, because in the process, Dipoto made one more important slip-up that flew under many radars at the time. With the Mariners in need of starting pitching depth, Dipoto swung a quick trade with the Dodgers to acquire Zach Lee. Lee stayed in the minors as depth and never appeared in MLB with Seattle, but surely Dipoto didn't give up anything too crazy to get him, right? Well, wrong. Sorry, Mariners fans. Going to LA in this deal was a 26-year-old scrappy, unproven utility guy by the name of Chris Taylor. Since that point in 2016, Taylor has put together an awesome career and even signed himself to a lucrative 4-year deal, and I'm pretty sure nobody saw that coming. In 695 career games to the point of this recording, he has 82 home runs, 53 stolen bases, and a 112 OPS plus to go along with an all-star appearance. That was a big miss by Dipoto. Dipoto's only saving grace of this 2016 season was acquiring Nick Vincent from the San Diego Padres for cash, as Vincent became a workhorse for the club for several years at an extremely small price. This was obviously overshadowed by Dipoto's blunders during this time, but Vincent was an important piece of the bullpen going forward. Okay, so that's a pretty horrible start to this journey in year 1, but the Mariners played a good brand of baseball, so Dipoto was safe for now. Dipoto went right back to the poisonous well of trading with the Tampa Bay Rays, completing 2 more transactions with them in what would be an offseason of 11 more trades for the Mariners. Drew Smyly and Richie Schaefer would go on to never play a single game in Seattle, and perhaps the best part of this is that Smith would return to the Mariners down the line and produce negative WAR for them in turn. Dipoto really cannot catch a break. For those keeping track at home, Dipoto had now traded 15.5 Baseball Reference WAR to the Rays in exchange for 0.1 B WAR in return in just 2 offseasons. Ryan Yarbrough and Andrew Kittredge are still pitching for the Rays to this day. But the 2016 offseason brought upon Dipoto's first move with real long-term success at the expense of a piece that would go on to have massive success in turn. The Mariners and Diamondbacks swung a blockbuster blockbuster deal, with Seattle acquiring key pieces in Gene Segura and Mitch Haniger from Arizona, while also depleting their farm system further, sending formerly touted prospects Taijuan Walker and Ketel Marte to the Diamondbacks in return. Walker was an established starter to this point, while Marte was more valued for potential he hadn't really displayed yet. Segura stuck with Seattle for just 2 seasons, but was extremely effective, making an All-Star appearance in 2018. His impact would go beyond his play for Seattle, but we'll get to that in a second. Mitch Haniger blossomed in Seattle, grabbing MVP votes in 2 separate seasons and also making an All-Star team. He's remained with the club through 2022 and is a vital piece of their lineup. In Ketel's time with the Diamondbacks, he finished top 4 in MVP voting in 2019, made the All-Star team, and inked a long-term extension this year. Walker's time in Arizona wasn't as long, aside from one fantastic 2017 season, as injuries played his time as a Diamondback. In terms of B-War exchange, in this deal, it's pretty close, but Seattle does get the edge to this point. So that's awesome. Dipoto swung a deal for 2 great players, both of whom benefited the franchise for years. Giving up Ketel Marte was obviously tough, but this trade seemed decently fair for both sides. Dipoto once again cut bait on some top prospects in his farm system in exchange for short-term help. He saw the potential in St. Louis lefty Marco Gonzalez and made a deal with the Cardinals to acquire him in exchange for outfield prospect Tyler O'Neill. I go back and forth on this trade since both have turned in great seasons during their time with their new clubs, and with the Mariners outfield as crowded as it is now, I don't think this deal is as horrible as some make it out to be. Both of them are having pretty poor 2022 seasons, so it's kind of up in the air. A deal he made that was far more egregious in my opinion came in connection with the Miami Marlins. Jeez, he just has bad luck with Florida teams, man. In an attempt to shore up his bullpen, Dipoto dealt for a solid reliever in David Phelps, sending 3 prospects to Florida in return. 2 would never pan out at the major league level, but one happened to become one of the most dominant starters in the current season of baseball by the name of Pablo Lopez. Considering that Phelps threw just 10 games for the Mariners, this trade was an absolute dud. Pablo Lopez has been very underrated for the Marlins for years, and is surely a guy the Mariners could use in their rotation right now. Dipoto finally settled down in the offseason of that year after the Mariners finished with a disappointing 78 wins. He made just 3 deals in the offseason, acquiring Ryan Healy and D. Gordon, both of whom regressed in their time with Seattle. In his trades, he sent away Nick Neidert, JP Sears, and Emilio Pagan, among others, all of whom are only really reaching their potential in the current MLB season. He stayed relatively calm in the 2018 season with 6 more trades, most of them inconsequential. He brought in Denard Span, as well as some reliable relievers in Alex Colomé, Zach Duke, and Adam Warren, with the prospects sent away producing no substantial success for their new teams. Finally, things were calming down. The Mariners even finished 2018 with a surprising 89 wins, their most since 2003, but still 8 games back of a playoff spot in the top-heavy American League. So would Jerry keep the core together and see if they can make another run at a playoff spot, or would he stop trying to compete? Well, the answer is actually the latter. Jerry hopped back on his trusty wagon and swung a staggering 8 trades during that year's offseason. Dipoto was shifting his focus to rebuilding the farm system, and his line of thinking in these trades ended up changing how people perceive his legacy as Mariners general manager. He swung minor deals, exchanging reliever Alex Colomé for Omar Narvaez and prospect Jesus Osorio for Tom Murphy. He was able to solidify the backstop position in exchange for a struggling reliever and a prospect who hasn't pitched since 2019. So far, so good. He also swung deals for Shed Long Jr. and Domingo Santana, both of whom would be productive in 2019 in exchange for prospects who have continuously struggled in the minors since. These guys wouldn't make much impact beyond 2019, but they were short-term help for a club that needed major league talent. And this came before 2 major headline-grabbing deals that would put both the spotlight on him and the Mariners. The first deal involved trading all-star shortstop Gene Segura and reliable bullpen arms in Juan Nicasio and James Pazos in exchange for struggling top prospect J.P. Crawford and a salary dump in Carlos Santana. Dipoto saw something in Crawford that many others did not, aside from his Gold Glove caliber defense. And while Segura had been reliable for the Phillies since the trade, he was only playing second base from here on in, and the Mariners needed a shortstop. Crawford has blossomed into a top 10 shortstop in the league and an integral piece of the Mariners lineup since. This, however, would be completely overshadowed by a mammoth trade conducted between the Mariners and the Mets. If you're a baseball fan, you know exactly what we're about to talk about. Dipoto and former agent Brodie Van Wagenen connected on a deal that sent Robinson Cano and his albatross contract to New York alongside elite closer Edwin Diaz in exchange for a salary dump of the Mets' own, as Jay Bruce, Anthony Swarzak, and Harrison Batista departed for Seattle. However, none of these pieces would take the headlines, as those would go instead to highly touted draft picks Jared Kelenic and Justin Dunn. The initial reviews were insanely mixed on this trade and still are to this day. After Robinson Cano's second suspension for steroids and Edwin Diaz's disaster of a 2019 season, the trade was viewed as one of the biggest fleeces in recent MLB history. I still think nowadays that the trade ended up fine for both sides, considering that the Mets cut ties with Cano's large contract, and Diaz has steadied himself into a top 5 reliever in the game. The Mariners received Kelenic, who became a huge piece of the last part of their 2021 playoff push, and Justin Justin Dunn, who was flipped in a future trade with the Cincinnati Reds, the one mentioned at the beginning of this video. Even if Kalanick doesn't pan out, Dipoto ridding himself of the money owed to Cano was absolutely massive and freed up Seattle to make impact moves in free agency 2 years down the line. The Mariners still stumbled out to a 68-94 season and another rebuilding year in 2019, and Dipoto swung 11 more trades during the season, none of them with any major significance. 2020 was a similar story as well, with the Mariners falling short of the expanded playoffs with a 27-33 season. While his trading calmed down in that offseason, aside from the acquisition of Nestor Cortez Jr. from the Yankees, this would later be returned, so it didn't end up mattering. The 2020 offseason kicked off a flurry of solid signings by Dipoto. Minor league deals for Paul Sewald and Chris Flexen turned out really good for the Mariners in 2021, while low-cost deals for James Paxton and Ken Giles were derailed by arm injuries. Dipoto swung 11 more deals during the 2021 regular season, with one of the most notable moves being the acquisition of Tyler Anderson from the Pirates at the trade deadline. But the most important trade of all would alarm Seattle's fans and even their players as well. In the midst of some serious momentum against their division rival in the Houston Astros, Dipoto made the shocking decision to deal with Houston at that year's deadline. In the deal, he sent an elite reliever to Houston and Kendall Graveman, one of his best signings in the offseason prior. Seattle received utility piece Abraham Toro and reliable reliever Joe Smith in return. Mariners players were irate with the decision to not only trade a vital piece of the bullpen, but to send said player to their most heated rival. An anonymous player, highly suspected to be the longest tenured Mariner of the 2010s in Kyle Seager, said the following: "Are you kidding me? It never changes. They don't care about winning. How do you trade him and say you care about winning? And you trade him to Houston? It never changes." Graveman, who was dominant for the Mariners, served well in an effective Houston bullpen that came 2 wins shy of a World Series that season. Mariners players were rightfully fed up with Dipoto's moves. There had been so much roster turnover year in and year out during his tenure that it was hard to build a sustainable, successful team. But in retrospect, however, with Graveman on a 1-year deal now pitching for Chicago, the Mariners may have gotten a solid piece in Abraham Toro, who they have control of until 2027. The book is still very much out on this trade, but it could swing public favor in Dipoto's line in the future. The 2021 Mariners reached 90 wins in a season for the first time since 2003, nearly 2 decades ago, but still falling one heartbreaking game short of a playoff berth. When Jerry Dipoto was trying to build a roster to compete for the postseason, he made a handful of really questionable trades. Now the Mariners have a top-ranked farm system and arguably one of the brightest young talents in the entire game in Julio Rodriguez. The 2022 year has not gone swimmingly so far for them, but the major acquisition for the reigning Cy Young and Robbie Ray, as well as the trades for Jesse Winker, Adam Frazier, and Eugenio Suarez, has put the 2022 squad in a position to succeed. So has Jerry Dipoto's near 7-year tenure been a success? Yes and no. It's quite hard to tell, especially considering the amount of moves he's made is probably nearing a 6-digit number at this point. But one thing that is true is that the Mariners are closer to success now than they ever were when Dipoto first came into office, and that certainly counts for something. Much of this story will be determined by if the Mariners can return to the postseason, but that remains to be seen as well. But that'll do it for today's video, and now a word from today's sponsor, DraftKings. Guys, you can slide into stacks of cash this baseball season with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. New customers can bet just $5 on any team to win, like the Seattle Mariners, and get $150 in free bets no matter what, win or lose. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the MLB season? Well, with DraftKings same-game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets like which team will win, aka the Mariners, how many bases will be stolen by JP Crawford, total runs scored by Julio Rodriguez, strikeouts by Robbie Ray, and more. It's your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, and best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code JOMBOY, bet just $5 and get $150 in free bets no matter what happens on the field. That's promo code JOMBOY at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and Jomboy Media. That'll do it for this video. I'm the Jolly Olive, and I'll see you guys next time.